When I first saw Dungeon Crawler Dan, nope, that's not right. When I first saw Discount Carl, ah, when I first saw Discount Dungeon Crawler Backdoor Brian, what's this book called again? When I first saw the title and cover of Discount Dan's Backroom Bargains, I wondered, is this a Dungeon Crawler Carl ripoff, a cheap imitation, a bargain bin version of that incredible series? When I fired up the audiobook, I thought, this is definitely a Dungeon Crawler Carl ripoff. Oh, how dirty. Why would anyone do this? How is this popular? But as the story progressed, my hostility melted away like froyo left in the sun, and now I have another series to toss on my mountainous, only getting mountainouser, yep, that's a real word, must read pile. I need to stop starting new series.
No fluff writing advice. Cut the fluff!
While I do have plenty of good things to say about Discount Dan, I also have a few gripes. Yes, this review's going to get gripey. But before that, let's cover the good bits and discuss why Discount Dan and Dungeon Crawler Carl can coexist on your bookshelf. Yes, it's true. It's like having two different hammers. Maybe one's a claw hammer and the other's a sledgehammer. Sure, they both sort of do the same thing, but they're not exactly alike. You've got to pick the right tool for the occasion. Yes, you can hammer in a nail with a sledgehammer or knock down a wall with a claw hammer, but it's not ideal, is it? Sometimes it's good to have two hammers, maybe even three. Oh, if Dungeon Crawler Carl's a sledgehammer and Discount Dan's a claw hammer, is there a mallet out there I'm missing? Oh! Anyway, back to the review. Discount Dan drops you right into the action, opening with a face-melting scene that's as disorienting for the reader as it is for Dan himself. Action-fueled openings can go either way. If they're too chaotic and confusing, readers can have trouble grounding themselves in the scene and story, which in some cases can actually be a desirable effect. Like in Discount Dan. The story starts and I'm confused. Dan's confused. Honestly, everyone in that opening scene seems at least a little confused, and that feeling doesn't fade for quite some time. Straight away, we get introduced to a unique angle of the series. In the backrooms, toys and other items from our world are powerful artifacts. It's so ridiculous. I love it. Let's pog! The author does a great job of creating and maintaining tension throughout the narrative. Dan genuinely gets into serious trouble several times, and there are real stakes beyond the potential death of our protagonist, which you know couldn't possibly happen until the last book, if it could happen at all, so it doesn't feel like a real threat. But I don't know that Dan's companions will make it out alive. I don't know if he'll manage to hold on to his business in this economy. The need to protect these assets is a great source of conflict in the story. If he loses his business, then he's just Dan. Who wants to be just Dan? Sorry to all the Dans watching this, but what are you going to do? I don't know. You could start a business yourself and add some words to your name. Just a thought. My point is, I love that Dan has motivations beyond just surviving. He's like, yeah, I know nothing about this place, but I reckon I could start a successful small business here. Why not? I swear lit RPG protagonists are the most accepting characters ever written. They get forcibly sucked into a new and confusing world, and they're just like, well, this is life now. Best get on with it and start a business or embrace being an ant. Great attitude. The magic system in Discount Dan is not necessarily groundbreaking, but definitely interesting. The skills and spells have a thematic twist, and the story provides a fresh take on some more traditional abilities while creating some pretty new ones. Forging is an interesting concept. Not sure if it's a common trope, but I don't think I'd come across it before. I will say though, Dan gets incredibly lucky right at the start. Without that little incident, he certainly wouldn't be the successful small business owner he is today. But I guess that's why we're following his story, so yeah, I'll allow a little luck. In general, I love the storytelling technique of having a major threat looming in the background while the protagonist deals with more immediate concerns. I'm talking about the Flayed Monarch and, what are they, the Skinless Court? That lot are a weird bunch with some odd habits. Anyway, you know that bomb's going to go off at some point, which helps maintain an underlying sense of
Tension and dread.
fight scenes are well written with plenty of tension. Okay, I really need to say something negative soon. I feel like I'm absolutely glazing this book. Don't worry, we'll get there. Where was I? The fight scenes, especially the first big one with the group of delvers, are fantastic. A few moral dilemmas thrown in the mix. Nice. A bit of character development. Good stuff. And, all right, a few more good points. Overall, the story's well paced and the author trickles information in slowly while maintaining a good level of intrigue. There is some leveling and grinding, but it usually leads somewhere. It's not just busy work or the author trying to bloat the word count. Minimal filler, plenty of killer. Oh, yeah, at one point, characters start speculating about what the backrooms are, which raises more questions than answers. Seriously, what is this place? It's weird and scary. Oh, there you go. That's one element that does help Discount Dan stand out among other series, especially the one you could easily mistake it for. It has a very horror vibe, whereas Dungeon Crawler Carl, for instance, feels more like urban fantasy. Would you call it that? Less horror for sure. I don't know. I'm not good with genres. My point is, the horror elements add an interesting dynamic to the story. Yeah. All right, here we go. Perhaps Discount Dan's biggest draw card. It's entertaining. Even the skill and item descriptions are engaging enough that my brain doesn't completely slide out of my skull during the spiels. The gabble of get fucked might be my all time favourite item name. Yeah, plenty of laugh out loud moments. Love the humour. One particular joke is very similar to something I said in my He Who Fights with Monsters Book 2 review. For the record, I heard it after I recorded that video, but yeah, it was an easy joke, low hanging fruit, but it just goes to show it's definitely my type of humour. Also, Steve Campbell's narration is brilliant, up there with some of the best I've heard. Croc's accent is absolutely ridiculous. What is he? Kiwi? South African? A mutt-like mix of several different accents? It's so confusing. Anyway, great character, great entertainment. Wouldn't trade him for anyone. Except maybe Donut. No, look, let's not pick favourites, that's rude. Now it is about to get rude in here because it's time to discuss Discount Dan's bad bits. Firstly, why does every dungeon crawler protagonist need a military background? Carl's in the Coast Guard and Dan's a former Marine turned carpenter or something. Contractor. The contractor background adds a nice layer to the character, but the Marine thing feels a bit forced. It's like the author just threw it on top at the last moment because maybe it's too unrealistic that someone without military training would survive the backrooms, and he might be right. I also noticed some inconsistencies in parts, nothing story breaking, just a little head scratching. For example, early on, Dan establishes that emblems are like classes, but then has the same revelation later, as if he didn't already figure it out. He does take some heavy damage, so maybe he just has a head injury, a bit of CTE maybe. Yeah, let's go with that. If you decide to enter the backrooms, be prepared for some pretty heavy info dumps. Stat and achievement dumps are the main offenders, and they're hard to skip when you're ear reading the audiobook. I mean, you could take a wild swing and just hit skip ahead 30 seconds a random number of times. But yeah, sometimes it feels like I'm being waterboarded with pointless information. It's a little uncomfortable. I'm here to be entertained, not bored into a coma. Oh, here's a positive that didn't last long. I found it refreshing that the backrooms are a terrifying hellscape, and Dan doesn't want to be there. In so many of the lit RPG books I've read, the main characters are happy to be sucked into another dimension and leave their shitty lives behind. Not Dan. Well, not at the start anyway. And then, oh, here we go again. Same old story. I thought you were different, Dan. But one man's hell is another man's heaven, as they probably say. If they don't say that, they should start. In closing, what I will definitively say is, while Discount Dan's author James Hunter, James, really? Where's the wacky Royal Road screen name? Bit disappointing. Anyway, while Dungeon Crawler Carl does seem to be an influence, Discount Dan is his own man, and the story and setting are original enough to justify the series' existence. So that's good. With that said, they are very similar in many ways. The humour, the dungeon crawling, the ex-military protagonist with a wacky non-human companion. Will we get to a point where lit RPG crossovers are a thing? Dan meets Carl, Croc meets Donut? I'll admit, even though I know it's wrong and gimmicky beyond belief, part of me does want to see that interaction. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy this video, hit subscribe anyway, and hate watch my content. That's always fun.